let's start this very interesting session. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the World Dairy Summit 2022 by International Dairy Federation. Today, we all have gathered here to understand food policy in the area of public policy concerning how food is produced, processed, distributed, purchased, or provided. We have our senior bureaucrats and elected representatives who will enlighten us on this topic to have a better understanding of dairy business. And before I proceed further, once again I would like to request everyone to kindly settle down so that we can proceed further with this beautiful evening all together. We have a very interesting session. I hope you all are very, very well mature to understand the same. Alright. To begin with, I would like to call on stage the Director General of the International Dairy Federation with 25 years of experience in senior executive and public affairs, roles in private, public and non-profit sector. She is also a lawyer and a diplomat. Please put your hands together for Miss Calorine. Can we have a huge, huge round of applause?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. We're having a packed room today, so I will ask everybody to move around. There's some place in the front. We actually have a good program for you today, and maybe if I could get that moving, you will see we have a 2-hour session, and the objective of this session that we've called actually the World Outlook, it's really to give you an overview of the environment in which, it's too late. It's give you an overview of the world in which dairy is evolving. So we'll show you today, we'll have a panel on policy and regulation. We also have a presentation on the World Dairy Situation Report and a presentation on global marketing trends. So that will give you an overview of the situation where we stand today. So let's start this 2-hour session with our policy panel. We have the privilege of having with us today a representative of the Director General of the Food and Alimentation of the UN, the FAO. So Mr. Thanawat Tiersen was appointed very recently as the new Director of Animal Production and Health at the FAO. So we're very happy to have him with us today, and he will be giving us a few words of introduction. After that, we'll have a presentation from both Minister Rupala from India, that you've seen earlier today, and after that from Minister Faitiri from New Zealand. And all of them will actually showcase with us their food policy in their country and how it's impacting on dairy. We will have, if the technology allows, we have 2 speakers that are working remotely. So we have from the EU, we have the EU Commissioner of Agriculture. So we hope that everything works. And we also have a colleague from the USDA, Jason F. Meister, and is the acting on the secretary. So again, if the technology allows, they will join us as well for this panel. So, Thanawat, I'd like to give you the floor so you give you your perspective on dairy and food policies. Thank you.
All right, everyone. So our next speaker is a permanent representative of the Kingdom of Thailand to the Rome-based agencies in the office of Agricultural Affairs of the Royal Thai Embassy based in Rome, Italy. A big round of applause for none other than but Mr. Thanawat. Can we have a huge round of applause?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's my privilege to be here. And as you listening to His Excellency Prime Minister Modi this morning, his powerful statement, it really brings a lot of energies to dairy sectors. And you should be very proud that you have a great champion for dairy sectors. Thank you very much, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished speakers, dear participants, and also our dairy farmers, representative, and also leaders of the dairy sectors around the world who come here in India today. It is my great privilege to speak to you, dairy farmers, leaders of the global dairy communities at the IDF World Dairy Summit in India. On behalf of Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Dr. Chu Dongju, also my own behalf, please allow me to thank the International Dairy Federation, the Government of India, and also the National Dairy Development Board of India for organizing these important events and also inviting me to speak to all of you today, because dairy have a future. And the future of dairy sectors is up to all of you here in this room and also who working in the field everywhere in this world. FAO have a long-standing collaboration with international dairy federations and also dairy farmers. We come together with other stakeholders to discuss matters of sustainability of livestock system and dairy sectors. With demands for high qualities dairy source protein increasing globally, as all of you know, and you have heard from the previous speakers about the growth of dairy sectors and also other sectors as well. The dairy sector is well placed to contribute the global food securities and poverty reduction through the supply of dairy products. It is essential that dairy sector's growth is sustainable. We need sustainability of the dairy sectors in terms of environment, public and animal health, welfare, and in terms of development, poverty alleviations, and also social reactions. As Prime Minister Modi mentioned this morning, India by 2025, each dairy cow will be vaccinated. And that's why all of commitment that made by the Prime Minister is very, very important for the dairy farmers in India. Despite the exponential growth of the dairy industry, our dairy farmers and producers are still facing challenges of shortage of feed, fodder, water scarcity in different parts of the world, marketing and pricing that many countries still have a low price of milk and also have a high price of animal feed that we are facing at the moment, and also poor qualities of milk, low yield of some animals in different parts of the world, including my country, Thailand as well, that we have a very low use of dairy cows, and also lack of infrastructures and fermented productions. Today, the challenge for policymakers and for dairy sectors is how to reduce environmental impacts while continuing to meet society needs, because our consumers, public, need the dairy sectors to do more on environmental impact. And that's why dairy products are a rich source of essential nutrients that contribute to the healthy and nutritious diets, farmer livelihood, and rural development. But we also have to be concerned about the environmental impact as well. And that's why this morning, the Prime Minister Modi also mentioned about the work that are ongoing in India about biogas, waste management, manure management, which actually I think is one of the good examples that other countries in different parts of the world can imitate, can scale up, and we can exchange our experience that we learn from farmers in India, and we can bring the experience of India to other parts in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and so on. And that's why today, the good news is that there are many opportunities within the sectors to limit the climate change by reducing the greenhouse gas emission. FAO and IDF collaborate in an ambitious initiative, Pathways to Dairy Net Zero. Along with other partners and stakeholders, this initiative is calling for action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from dairy system. And also, we need to enhance the important role that dairy play in food and nutrition security, livelihood, and economic growth. And that's why during the next year, when India is a G20 presidency, it's a good opportunity that we can raise the profile of dairy sectors, livestock sectors, what we are doing, what we are contributing. We together need to build up the global positive narrative of livestock system, the global positive narrative of dairy sectors together. Ladies and gentlemen, FAO will continue to work with member states, dairy farmers, and dairy communities, partners, and all other stakeholders in promoting sustainable livestock transformation. We are also promoting sustainable, inclusive, equitable, and efficient livestock transformation to achieve better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life for all. FAO appreciate your work in dairy sectors, in dairy system, and will be very happy to carry on supporting all of you and the sectors. I look forward to our continued collaboration. Wish you successful meeting. We need to act now for better future of dairy sectors. Together we can make it. Thank you very much. Tanyabat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this first introduction in terms of our role of policy in dairy. So Minister Rupala, would you like to go next and share your views? Oh, ladies first, thank you. You want to go first?
Inga mana i ngā reo, i ngā kārangaranga maha o ngā hauhe whā. Kua tae mai i runga te kaupapa te rā, tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou, a tēnā tātou katoa. Greetings to all languages, cultures and peoples. Namaste and kia ora. To our IDF President and to the DG, thank you very much for the kind invitation and warm welcome. Last night I attended the cultural opening, and can I say the 8 extraordinary gentlemen that entertain us were second to none. So I want to acknowledge the fantastic opening held last night. May I acknowledge our host, India, in your 75th year of independence. Congratulations. To the Honourable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi, may I extend my appreciation for your warm welcome and opening comments to the summit. Your ongoing commitment to the Indian dairy sector, specifically in growing both Indigenous and women opportunities and leadership, is pleasing to hear as an Indigenous woman myself, but more importantly, for its wider application in an international context. New Zealand's trade agenda for all has a strong focus on its Indigenous Māori people and women. So we stand ready to work in cooperation with India towards these shared goals in the dairy and wider primary sector. May I also take this time to acknowledge the recent and historic appointment of Madam President Draupadi Murmu as President of India, marking the first time a tribal person has held India's head of state role. Congratulations and well done. To my ministerial colleagues and friends joining me on the panel today, I look forward to our discussions. Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, delegates and dairy farmers, I am pleased to join you at this year's World Dairy Summit here in New Delhi, India. And I bring with you the warm regards of the government and people of Aotearoa, New Zealand. The important theme of this summit, dairy for nutrition and livelihood. Dairy farming is an important part of Aotearoa New Zealand's story. Today, I'm going to discuss the key policies and regulations impacting on New Zealand's dairy sector. I will share 3 Māori proverbs on which I will inform you of New Zealand's food story. This will demonstrate how we are caring for our environment, our people, and our animals. Firstly, caring for the environment. In the Māori culture, there is a proverb that says, "Whatu ngaro te tangata, toitu te whenua," which simply translates means, as humans disappear from sight, the land will always remain. Māori believe that the earth is our mother, and that if we care for her, she will provide for us in return. In line with that worldview, the New Zealand Government is undertaking a comprehensive program of regulatory reforms to ensure our food is produced to the highest standards of sustainability. Fit for a Better World is New Zealand's primary sector strategy, which embraces the Indigenous Māori concept of te tai ao, a deep relationship of respect and reciprocity with the natural world. Through this environmental lens, we have signalled our commitment to meet the greatest challenges humanity faces, rapidly moving to a low-carbon emissions society, restoring the health of our water, reversing the decline in biodiversity, and at the same time producing food for our people in a way that aligns with our values. Our nationally determined contribution, the Zero Carbon Act, commits New Zealand to achieving net zero emissions by 2050, including a specific biogenic methane emissions reduction target of between 24 to 47%. This world-leading separate emissions target reflects a major focus for reducing emissions from agriculture in New Zealand, which latest figures show represents around 50% of all our overall emissions. So how will we achieve these targets? We are already making progress, including through pricing agricultural greenhouse gas emissions by 2025, another world-leading approach. To achieve this, we have been working in partnership with our industry groups and Māori agribusinesses through the He Waka Eke Noa Primary Sector Climate Action Partnership. The partnership is equipping farmers and growers to measure, manage, and reduce on-farm agricultural greenhouse gases emissions. As of May 2022, 61% of farmers in New Zealand know their on-farm emissions profile, and 21% have a written plan to reduce their emissions. Our first emissions reduction plan, published earlier this year, also includes a set of key actions to support farmers, growers, and Māori landowners to lower agricultural emissions, while continuing to produce high-value, high-quality food and fibres. Theme number 2, caring for people. The second proverb I will share is he aha te mea nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Simply translated as, what is the greatest entity in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. Put simply, people are our greatest treasure and our greatest asset. Addressing mental health, farm safety and food safety on farms that the New Zealand Government is focusing on caring for people. Anecdotal evidence and analysis of mental health statistics reveal that rural communities have high rates of burnout and stress, which have the potential to lead to depression and other forms of mental illness. The aim is to enable rural health professionals to support rural communities, to better able to cope with the ups and downs of farming. The focus is on community-based and farmer-to-farmer support. One of the initiatives the New Zealand government has established to deal with this is the establishment of a number of public awareness and support programs to increase social inclusion and end discrimination towards people who experience mental illness or distress. We are doing this through public awareness campaigns, community projects, and research. Ensuring that the safety of food is maintained through each step of the production chain is another important way that we care for the health and well-being of our people by preventing foodborne illnesses. So we provide assurances domestically and internationally based on strict rules and criteria under the Ministry for Primary Industries, and provide education and guidance to New Zealand businesses and consumers around the safety of foods. Consumers can then trust that the food they eat is safe, suitable, and accurately labelled. We also acknowledge that many of our rural Māori communities have to rely more heavily on their natural environment for food due to their geographical remoteness. For this reason, it is even more important for New Zealand to ensure that we develop better environmental sustainability practices to care for our people. The final proverb that I will share in our food story is e kuikui te tui, e keke te kāka, e kuku te kiriru. This proverb acknowledges that animals too have their own voice and right to be respected, having an important place and role in this world. New Zealand is naturally blessed when it comes to making milk. New Zealand's climate, soil, and abundant water create the perfect environment for growing grass. And our cows can access pasture all year round, following their natural inclinations to be outside. As an island nation, far from anywhere, New Zealand is free from many pests and animal diseases found elsewhere in the world. New Zealand and international audiences have high expectations that the animals under our care are well looked after. New Zealand's reputation as a responsible producer of animals and animal products underpins our trade and industry. I understand that the care for animals is very important to the people of India, as it is to our own people. This shared philosophy supports our work together on animal welfare under the World Organization for Animal Health's Regional Animal Welfare Strategy for Asia, the Far East and Oceania, amongst other connections. And I want to acknowledge this relationship and shared commitment to progress animal welfare. So we work closely with the dairy sector to support farmers to care for their cows. Our pastoral sector is generally very good for animal welfare, as cows can engage in normal behaviours outdoors, like lying down and having social interactions. In poor weather farming, outdoors can be challenging for animals. For several years, my officials have been working collaboratively with the industry to develop resources, deliver and seminars to improve the wealth of animals during winter. So much credit goes to our farmers, who have made improvements to their winter grazing systems and are trialling new and innovative approaches to caring for animals in inclement weather. In April 2022, New Zealand amended our intensive winter grazing regulations to make them more practical for farmers and effective in lifting environmental outcomes. I also want to acknowledge the support of the International Dairy Federation in promoting dairy welfare globally and for transparent reporting on animal welfare. So I believe that as we work to care for our environment, people and animals, we will be in a much better position overall, both now and into the future, as we continue to look to nourishing the world. New Zealand has a deep stake in the wider Indo-Pacific region's stability, and we share the common ambition of peace and prosperity for the region, including through greater economic integration and adherence to its institutions and norms. Underpinning all of our efforts are our people-to-people relationships. And these are the building blocks for our international connections bilaterally, regionally, and globally. We look forward to deepening and expanding our cooperation relationships with India moving forward. Nō reira, o ku raurangatira mā, tēnā koutou, a tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. I'm aware that our colleagues are online. Would you like us to go online, Minister, and I'll keep you for the end? Yes, yes, I'm hearing yes, yes. Okay, so do we have a colleague, EU Commissioner, online? Yes?
Yes, I'm ready.
Hello, welcome. Can we see you?
Hello.
Can we see you?
Okay.
Hello, welcome. Yes, we see you. Wonderful.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon. That's everybody. I can start?
Yes, you can. We're waiting for you. We're all seeing you on screen.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is both a pleasure and honor to join such a distinguished audience today, even if on remotely, and to discuss such an important topic. All over the world, dairy has a crucial role to play in human nutrition and in rural vitality. In the European Union, milk is produced in every single member state. Dairy provides safe and nutritious food, in particular to vulnerable population groups. You find dairy both in subsistence farming in developing countries, as well as in the richest societies who associate quality dairy products with a higher standards of living. Today's challenge for the European Union, as well as for our planet, is to make sure that this vulnerable sector can develop into a model of sustainability, not only from an environmental and climate point of view, but also from a social and economic point of view. Let's start with the latter, the economic point of view. The last 2.5 years have been challenging and difficult for the entire agri-food sector, including the dairy sector. Firstly, we have been dealing with consequences of the deadly outbreaks of the COVID-19 pandemic, which have claimed millions of human lives, put an enormous strain on our economies, and also destabilized agri-food chains in the world. One thing is clear: the COVID-19 pandemic has underlined the importance of a robust and resilient food system. This system must function in all circumstances and be capable of ensuring access to a sufficient supply of affordable food for our citizens. Secondly, the Russian military aggression, which has been going on for nearly 7 months, in causing extensive damage and loss of thousands of innocent lives and forcing millions of Ukrainians to flee their homes. The consequences of the Russian aggression in Ukraine are seen worldwide. The war is disrupting important trade flows for many agricultural commodities, as well as fuel and fertilizers. This threatens food security in many parts of the world. The economic angle is closely linked with the environmental one. The increasing recurrence of droughts, floods, forest fires, animal diseases, and new pests are a constant reminder that our food system is under threat and must become more resilient. It is obvious that in these circumstances, doing business is extremely challenging. But I must say that the European dairy sector, industry, and farmers have shown their robustness and resilience. Definitely, dairy markets are experiencing a truly exceptional situation. High input prices, very hot and dry weather conditions, greater restrictions on water, on feed and environmental constraints explain the current tight milk supply worldwide. Milk production costs are quite high in the European Union. However, despite the fact that raw milk prices paid to EU farmers are at the record high levels, milk production drops are observed in major dairy producing countries. We observe a tight milk supply, not only in the EU, but also in other major exporting countries, including the USA, New Zealand, and Australia. Uncertainty related to the evolution of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic downturn, rising food prices in many countries, the conflict in Ukraine, and many other factors have an impact on the confidence of consumers as well of dairy farmers. Milk production is becoming a challenge, in particular for farms depending on purchased feed. We are used to that. We have what we have witnessed this year is how extreme weather events are also impacting pasture-based milk production. The widespread drought that we observe in Europe this year clearly impacted on pastures. You can drive a long way through Europe for the moment without encountering green grass. This has an impact on what animals are eating now, as farmers need to provide them with hay or other feed sources that would normally have been used in winter. Some still have stocks from last year, but for how long? This is a clear signal that we must continue building more sustainable, productive, and resilient agricultural systems. In the European Union, our farm to fork strategy covers the entire food value chain. It puts forward both regulatory and non-regulatory measures. Apart from preventing food waste and food fraud and improving animal welfare, the strategy will also stimulate a sustainable food consumption, help consumers choose healthy and sustainable diets, promote affordable food for all, and strengthen food security. This is an initiative on which the European Union cannot work alone. The whole planet is concerned. That's why the European Union is promoting sustainability at international level to ensure that the objectives of our strategy are fully aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and that we can delivering results globally. Ladies and gentlemen, the transition to sustainable food systems requires a collective approach involving public authorities, non-governmental organizations, and actors across the food value chain from farm to fork. And this is where I want to put to final emphasis today. Dairy provides safe and nutritious food to populations as well as livelihoods in regions across the world. To protect the essential nutrition and livelihoods that the sector provides, we need to enhance its resilience and sustainability. Today's meeting provides an ideal platform to discuss our task and how we can meet it together with success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wasikovic, for your presentation. I will ask our colleague from USDA, Mr. Jason Effermaster, Acting Undersecretary for Farm and Foreign Agriculture Services, to make his opening remark. Floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon to the participants in India and to those worldwide at this summit. I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak at the World Dairy Summit today being held in India. The Secretary had been invited to this event, but as you know, it's very early here in the US, and he has a packed schedule this week to make some very important announcements around US agriculture policy related to sustainability, which fits in very much with the theme of the event that you are holding. And I'm happy to share some thoughts from the US. But before that, I do want to express my appreciation for IDF as a leading source of scientific and technical expertise for all stakeholders in the dairy chain, which helps to feed the world with self and sustainable dairy products. I also want to congratulate India for being the host of this year's summit. And I look forward to everybody attending the 2023 Dairy Summit to be held in Chicago, Illinois, this time next year. It's a great chance for all of the people involved in the sector to share ideas, to learn from each other, and talk about dairy's role in addressing some of the major challenges facing the world. Agriculture has this overriding responsibility. How do we feed a growing population on a limited resource base? The world dairy industry is on the cutting edge of this challenge, and I see that every day here with the US dairy industry, which is providing steady growth in production of a vital food source and ever improving environmental practices. And that's all thanks to the hardworking dairy farmers who are putting their time and their money and their talent to service this critical global requirement. You know, since 1945, the world population has grown by 5 billion people. And even as we saw this incredible increase of people on the planet, we saw the number living under extreme poverty falling from nearly 80% to less than 10%. It's a tremendous story of human success, a tremendous improvement in human livelihoods. But it does show the challenge that we do have to face as the population continues to grow and as consumption continues to increase, about how do we continue that tremendous track record, even as we are not creating any more land and we're trying to find out ways to reduce our impact on it. US dairy production has been up 20% in the last 10 years. Our farmers are meeting the challenge of feeding the world. US dairy exports are also up over that period. Globally, world trade in dairy products has increased by to $58 billion a year. And this is a 5% growth just in the last 5 years. So at the core of this is a challenge of farm production. And here the US dairy sector plays a critical role in sustainable food systems and global food security. The efficiency and the innovation in US production of nutrient-dense, high-quality dairy foods nourish people and support farmers' livelihoods. Without that activity, we would not meet our obligation to feed a growing world. Now, there's a lot of tension on the environmental side of food production these days. And here I do want to applaud IDF's contribution towards the Sustainable Development Goals. In particular, we look at Sustainable Development Goal number 2, eradicating hunger, number 3, improving global health outcomes, number 12, promoting sustainable consumption, and number 13, mitigating the effects of climate change. In each of these areas, dairy industry is making important strides, and it's thanks to organizations like this that we're able to share best practices and challenge each other to move forward. I want to highlight that the US dairy industry's commitment to achieving greenhouse gas neutrality, optimizing water usage, and improving water quality by 2050. These ambitious goals have been set by the US dairy industry to address the need to sustainably increase our production, to address the food needs and the environmental challenges. USDA, where I work, supports the pathway to dairy net zero And we have aided a number of the overseas missions in 9 countries: Uruguay, Costa Rica, Colombia, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, Vietnam, Pakistan, and India, as we all try to share best practices in this regard. You know, it's improving productivity and sustainable dairy production practices around the world can be a part of the global climate solution, especially in support of the global methane pledge, which we joined last year and are looking forward this year at the COP27 to have an important update on our progress. Let me highlight a couple of other key factors that is allowing dairy to do its job of feeding the world in a more sustainable way. One is on labeling. You know, the Codex Alimentarius Commission has adopted a guidance document on front of pack nutritional labeling and a standard on labeling of non-retail containers of food. And these are standards that we expect countries to use worldwide to guide the regulation and the commercialization of dairy products. This is a great way for consumers to understand better what they are consuming, but also to provide a level playing field so that all producers know what their requirements are. Food hygiene, safe food. The US regulatory system, along with our dairy industry, has a strong record of a safety culture, which is an essential aspect of ensuring that food companies produce safe and high quality products. Standards every day are increasing. Our customers every day expect more, and the US industry is happy to work to meet those high demands. We feel that our food is the best in anywhere. Let's talk about waste. US dairy farmers prevent food waste through the diversion of byproducts from the food industry, and they convert it into animal feed. You know, tremendous work is being done about the circular economy, and tremendous work is being done through methane digesters to reduce the load on the planet's ecosystem and find new revenue streams for dairy farmers. We think that this is critical to meeting the sustainability challenge for a cleaner environment, increasing production, and increasing profitability for farmers. The United States continues to make significant promise, and we feel is a good model for dairy producers everywhere. US dairy farmers are innovating to optimize feed and genetics, to decrease emissions, including methane, to reduce food waste, and support healthier, sustainable communities. Here in the US, we have strong nutrition and dietary recommendations to help guide our consumers to optimal diet. According to the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, dairy, including fat-free and low-fat milk, yogurt, and cheese, is part of a healthy dietary pattern. Individuals who are lactose intolerant can choose low lactose and lactose-free dairy products. Dairy products, especially low and fat-free products, are part of the USDA-administered child nutrition program, such as the National School Lunch and Breakfast programs and the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, famously known as WIC. The low-fat and fat-free fluid milk is a required component of meals served in our National School Lunch and Breakfast program. Nearly 30 million school lunches and 15 million school breakfasts are served to school-aged children on any given day in the United States. Low-fat cheese and yogurt can also be on the school lunch breakfast menus. Finally, fluid milk is part of the WIC program. These packages that go for children for 1 year and older, for pregnant and postpartum women. Fluid milk can be substituted for yogurt and cheese and other nutrient equivalent foods, and WIC is designed to safeguard the health of low-income women, infants, and children up to age 5 who are at nutritional risk. So there's a big challenge facing farmers all over the planet, including dairy farmers. And we see dairy products as a critical source of protein for a growing and wealthier world. We see dairy farmers on the cutting edge of having a lighter footprint on the land and contributing to approaches that will reduce emissions and increase to contain the carbon that's already been emitted. And we look forward to working with other countries and with our producers in creating an institutional environment which will encourage better practices by farmers, educate consumers, and support the most rational and efficient allocation of global resources to allow the best farmers to provide the most food for the people who are consuming it and have higher standards every day. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the conference and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Affermester, and thank you. I know it's super easy. It's very early in the US right now, so thank you for joining us live as well. So we don't have much time for questions, but I want to give an opportunity to Minister Upala to share his point of view and policy on dairy in India, and how we can maybe get inspired by the situation in India. Thank you, Minister.
वर्ल्ड डेयरी समिट 2022 के एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण सेशन जिसमें पॉलिसीज के बारे में डिस्कशन करने के लिए बहुत ही रिच पैनल आयोजित किए गए थे.
In the auspicious session of World Day Summit 2022, we have discussed very important topics.
जिसमें न्यूजीलैंड के माननीय मंत्री जी, FAO के, USDA के और EUA के प्रतिनिधियों ने हिस्सा लिया.
The Minister of New Zealand and
USDA, UE and FAO. और कैरोलिना जो अपने डीजी है IDF के, उन्होंने बहुत ही सुंदर तरीके से इनका संचालन किया.
And the chair, Caroline, presided it very well with her best efforts.
हमारे देश में खाद्य के बारे में और स्वस्थ भोजन और सुरक्षित भोजन के बारे में बहुत ही गंभीरता से प्रयास किया जा रहा है,
In
क्योंकि
our country, we are extremely focusing on the soil and the health.
भारतीय संविधान प्रत्येक नागरिक को स्वस्थ और सुरक्षित भोजन का अधिकार देता है.
Indian culture do extremely believe in the health of everyone in the country and around.
भारत में खाद्य नीतियां अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संगठनों द्वारा अपनाए गए मानकों के एक प्रोटोकॉल के तहत तैयार की जाती है, जिसका भारत एक सदस्य है. भारत में खाद्य सुरक्षा और मानक प्राधिकरण FSSAI मुख्य निकाय है जो खान पान की वस्तुओं की बेहतर गुणवत्ता सुनिश्चित करने और बनाए रखने के लिए मानक निर्धारित करती है.
In India,
FSSAI भारत के खाद्य नियमों और विनियमों को अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मानकों के अनुरूप बनाता है. मैं स्लो करूं?
yes.
बोलिए ना.
The Indian organization FSSAI.
इंटरप्रेट हो रहा है हिंदी का.
I will do it, sir. The Indian organization FSSAI is at the lead to, set the standards at the international level.
भारतीय मानक ब्यूरो उपभोक्ता मामले, खाद्य और सार्वजनिक वितरण मंत्रालय भारत सरकार के तहत एक राष्ट्रीय मानक निकाय है जो सामान के मानकीकरण, अंकन और गुणवत्ता प्रमाणन की गतिविधियों के विकास के लिए और उससे जुड़े या उसके प्रासंगिक मामलों के लिए है.
Bureau of Indian Standard, the Government of India is the leading organization which looks after the national standards in this country.
एपीडा एक भारतीय शीर्ष निर्यात व्यापार संवर्धन सक्रिय सरकारी निकाय है.
APIDA is the topmost export promotion agency of the Government of India, Agriculture and Processed Food Export Development Authority, which is extremely active.
ताजी सब्जियां, फल और उसके निर्यात प्रोत्साहन के प्रमुख निकाय के रूप में यह अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजार में निर्यात व्यापार में लगे किसानों, भंडार गृहों, पैकर्स, निर्यातकों, सतत परिवहन, बंदरगाहों, रेलवे, एयरवेज एवं अन्य सभी के बीच महत्वपूर्ण इंटरफेस प्रदान करता है.
APIDA plays an important and a critical role between the exporters, farmers, international markets, identifying markets and doing exhibitions.
विज्ञान के माध्यम से स्वच्छ, सुरक्षित और स्वस्थ दूध और दूध उत्पादों को सुनिश्चित करने के उद्देश्य से एनडीडीबी के द्वारा 2017 में क्वालिटी मार्क अवार्ड शुरू किया गया था।
NDDB has started a landmark quality mark award in 2017 to ensure the quality of milk in this country.
जो राष्ट्रव्यापी पहल था जिससे खाद्य सुरक्षा, पर्यावरण सुरक्षा, ऊर्जा संरक्षण और प्रबंधन, संयंत्र दक्षता और मानव सुरक्षा सहित बहुत आयामी गतिविधियों को बढ़ावा दिया जा सके।
And NDDB's this task was highly appreciated to be multidimensional and looking after a number of activities in dairy processing and marketing.
इसे आगे ले जाते हुए केंद्र सरकार के मार्गदर्शन में एनडीडीबी और बीआईएस को एक साथ लाया गया।
The central government and the government of India has brought NDDB and Bureau of Indian Standard together to work as a joint organization and to take the India's dairy activities forward.
प्रोडक्ट एंड प्रोसेस दोनों को एकीकृत किया गया और कन्फर्मेटरी असेसमेंट स्कीम को माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी की हाल ही के द्वारा लॉन्च किया गया है।
Honorable Prime Minister has launched a confirmatory scheme, by integrating these things.
इससे एक राष्ट्र, एक प्रमाणीकरण, एक लोगो सुनिश्चित किया गया है।
This has facilitated one nation and one standardization. This has ensured it.
भारत सरकार और एनडीडीबी स्वच्छ दूध उत्पादन के कार्यान्वयन में डेयरी सहकारी समितियों को तैयार कर रहे हैं।
Government of India and NDDB are working together to make the cooperatives very active and effective.
संपूर्ण डेयरी मूल्य श्रृंखला में सीएमपी ने न केवल दूध संग्रह प्रणाली और कोल्ड चेन का आधुनिकीकरण और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मानकों को अपनाते हुए आईएसओ 22000 को प्राप्त करना शामिल है।
One of our aim is also to achieve the ISO 2022 by standardizing all the international standards and all that, so that the Indian dairy products becomes that of the international standards.
खाद्य सुरक्षा प्रत्येक राष्ट्र की सर्वोच्च जिम्मेदारी है।
Food security is the core priority of each nation.
खाद्य उद्योग को नियंत्रित करने में खाद्य कानून और नीतियां बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाती है।
To regulate the food industry and the food business, the policies play a crucial role.
यह महत्वपूर्ण है कि खाद्य उद्योग में बदलती परिस्थितियों और तकनीकी विकास की गति के साथ कानून को अद्यतन किया जाए।
It is extremely important that with the changes, the policies and the rules and regulations also need to be adapted.
भारत को अन्य देशों के अनुभव से सीखने में खुशी होगी।
India would be very happy to learn from the experiences of the other countries.
मैं इस सत्र के दौरान किए जाने वाले डिस्कशन के लिए शुभकामनाएं देता हूं।
I am highly congratulate each one of you for the discussions which have taken place in this session.
जय हिंद।
Jai Hind.
Thank you so much to our great speakers. And I know we don't have a lot of time, so I will give you maybe like a minute each for a concluding remark. And you have showcased how dairy helps deliver on SDGs. So I'd like you maybe in that minute to tell us how we can help you to do more in delivering. 2030 is coming soon. So what can we do as a sector to help you and delivering more? So I give you 1 minute each, and if we can bring our two colleagues on screen, that'll be wonderful. Thank you.
Today is 12th of September in New Delhi, India. We say that we want to make progress. The action have to do now for better futures of dairy sectors. Next year, we will meet in Chicago, and all of you have to bring result there and to show the world that dairy sector make better progress. And we can explain to our consumers, public, what we have done to our planet, to our people, and to the sector itself. Thank you very much.
Kia ora no. It's a simple suggestion from New Zealand. Please come and visit us. Come and visit us, see firsthand and talk to our dairy farmers. Keep the dialogue opening, because I'm proud of the effort that our dairy sector is playing currently, but I know we can do more. And the way we do that is through the relationships we have with each other and the openness to exchange ideas. So it's as simple as no mai, hara mai, which in my language is you are most welcome to come to New Zealand and visit us. Kia ora koutou.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We will ask you to stay in the room. We will just change panel. It will take a minute. And I would invite you to attend a little bit later this afternoon the IDF Dairy Innovation Awards. So that might give you ideas as well on how we can contribute more in helping you to deliver on the SDGs. Thank you so much, all of you, for your presentation. Thank you to our colleague online. Unfortunately, they left already. So thank you. And I will ask our colleague, Menesh Shah, Laurent Lemien, and Jean-Marc Chemet to join us on stage for the next part of the program. Could you please put the presentation for Jean-Marc Chemet, please, on screen? Okay, I understand it's late afternoon, but we do have a good program to continue on, so I will ask you to sit down, please.
All right, so I have a very humble request from all the ladies and gentlemen to kindly take back your seat as we have another session to proceed with, which is very, very interesting. You all are very well mature enough to understand the same.
Okay, so let's start. Then people will actually have to listen. That's my strategy. So I would like to invite our colleague from France, Jean-Marc Chemet, who's been part of the editing team for the World Dairy Situation Report that we are releasing today. So Jean-Marc, come on.
Okay. Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored to be here today among you. First of all, I would like to thank IDF for the invitation and the opportunity to give a few insights on the World Dairy situation. Wow. But before delving into the report, the World Dairy Situation Report, I would like to start with some acknowledgements because the content of this presentation is a result of a collective effort. The data and charts I'm going to show you mostly come from the World Dairy Situation Report, which is an annual publication from IDF. The report is processed by two dairy organizations, namely Zwevelenel from the Netherlands and CNIEL from France. And well, it is based on data and information provided by the IDF national committees and other dairy organizations with the help of IDF head office. And in this year's report, you will also find a chapter from Rabobank and a chapter from OECD. So on behalf of the World Dairy Situation team, we would like to thank all of them for their valuable input. We also want to thank our platinum sponsor, Mengyo. Mengyo has been the sponsor of the report for some years now, and this year again, so we like to thank it for the support for the publication of this report. So let's start with the presentation of the report now. First, we will look back on what happened in 2021. It was quite an unusual year after 2020. And we will cover the topics of milk production, milk processing, consumptions, trade, and prices. And in the second part of the presentation, we will discuss the situation on the first half of 2022, which is also quite unusual. So let's start with milk production. Well, if you remember, in 2 years ago, in 2020, we saw that COVID-19 had a very limited impact on milk production. Global milk production grew by 3% in 2020, and it was quite the same in 2021. I mean, prevention and control measures of COVID-19 had very limited effect on milk production. But nevertheless, global milk production last year only grew by 2.1%, which is below average and below 2000 growth. Last year, global milk production reached 930 million tons, by the way, which is a new record. So why is that? Why in 2021 milk production growth was below 2020's production growth? When the limited growth of milk production in 2021 reflected the difficult supply, especially in key exporting regions, because of the sharp increase in production costs, energy, fertilizers, animal feed. And these rising costs were the result of a strong economic recovery in the second half of the year and also disruptions in supply chain throughout the world. Well, it was sometimes difficult to find containers to load them or to unload them. If we look at the details in the table on the right-hand side, we see that among species, cow's milk production, which accounts around 80% of global milk production, only grew by 1.6%, which is also below medium-term average. And we will see that limited supply of cow's milk will have consequences dairy production, dairy trade, and dairy consumption. In fact, last year again, a big share of the growth comes from buffalo milk. Buffalo milk production grew by more than 5% last year, which is above average. And year after year, the share of buffalo milk increases. It was 13% in 2010, it's now close to 16%. Besides buffalo milk, the other growth factor in global milk production was production in the milk-deficient region. Asia in particular, but not only, also other emerging markets. And in these regions, dairy production is pushed forward by the strong local demand for dairy products. So now, let's take a look at the geographical breakdown of cow's milk production. Asia now accounts for 33% of cow's milk production, and 23% for India alone, but 33% for Asia, compared to 26% 10 years ago. For the last 10 years, Asia has been the leading growth region with an annual growth rate of more than 4%. And Asia is responsible for 60% of the global increase in cow's milk production over the last 10 years. And you can see that the growth in the other regions were lower over the past 5 or 10 years. Plus 1.8% in Africa, plus 1.5% in the USA, only 0.7% in the EU, and even a decrease in Oceania. So as I said, the bulk of the supply growth of cow's milk production, has taken place in Asia for the last 10 years, and it was again the case last year. Last year, cow's milk production increased by more than 4% in Asia. And the most impressive growth was seen in Asia. In India, plus 7%, and also in China, around 7%. But besides Asia, milk production in the other regions were very limited. The other key milk deficient region, Africa, only added limited volumes, plus 1.8%. In the USA, production went up in the first half of the year and went down in the second half of the year, and on average, for the 2021, only grew by 1%. Milk production in the EU 27 decreased last year. It was the first time in more than a decade, and it decreased especially in the northwestern part of Europe, in Germany, the Netherlands, and France, mostly because of high production costs and also environmental issues. In Oceania, you had also high production costs, challenging weather, environmental issues, and all of these factors led to a decrease of production in Australia and a very limited growth in New Zealand. And growth was also marginal in South America. Sharp increase in Argentina and Uruguay, but, well, offset by a decrease in Brazil. But of course, we are talking about milk production. Now, let's talk about milk deliveries, because only a part of the milk produced globally is delivered to dairy companies to be processed into dairy products. The share of milk delivered to dairies can be high in industrialized countries and can be low in emerging countries where a big share of the milk is sold through informal market. And again, 2 years ago in 2020 was a surprisingly dynamic year despite COVID-19 crisis. Global cow's milk deliveries increased by 2.5% in 2020, but 2021 was another story. In the first half of the year was almost in line with 2020 tendency, but a strong economic growth in the second half of the year impacted input cost of production, and led to a decline of production in some big dairy regions. And on average, over the year, milk deliveries only grew by 0.5%, which is lower than in 2020 and lower than the medium-term average. So with limited growth in milk deliveries in 2021, the total output of dairy product showed a small increase compared to the long-term trends. But of course, developments were different according to the dairy product. For example, global cheese output increased by 2.9%, which is above medium-term average. And global cheese production increased in the leading exporting regions, the USA, New Zealand, and the EU. And in fact, in 2021, dairy processors favored cheese over butter. And butter production slowed down at 0.9%, with well below the 5-year average. Butter production was down in exporting countries, the EU, the USA, and New Zealand, but was up in many other countries. WMP production was up 1.3%. It increased in New Zealand, South America, but production was down, sharply down in the EU, minus 9%. So because you had more cheese, more WMP, and limited milk deliveries, world SMP production decreased last year, decreased by 1.5%. And the production dropped significantly in the EU, 6%, a little bit in Oceania. It increased in the USA and South America, but not enough to balance, so a decrease in SMP. So let's go now to the rest of the dairy product. Again, if you remember what happened 2 years ago in 2020, there was an increase in liquid milk production. lockdowns and COVID-19 measures favored liquid milk consumption at home throughout the world. Well, in 2021, liquid milk production went back to its previous trend, downward trend, and decreased by 0.4%. This is the story is the same for condensed milk. For whey, it's different. Whey is, for the most part, a byproduct of cheese manufacturing. So whey production increased because cheese production went up. But that's not the only reason. Another reason is Chinese demand. There is a rebound in Chinese demand for whey, of course, following the rebuilding of the Chinese pig herd. So Chinese whey powder production increased. If we look now at dairy consumption, again in 2020, 2 years ago, consumption trends were greatly affected by the situation, COVID-19 crisis, and there was a shutdown of food service channels, leading to a higher demand of packaged goods and a lower demand for food service. In 2021, sanitary measures gradually eased and food service channels gradually reopened. And many people went back to their old consumption habits. So the result was a year-on-year decline in retail sales in favor of out-of-home consumptions, even if some Asian countries were still facing lockdowns and restrictions. On the other hand, the world population grew by 17 million people, around 1%, bringing the total to 7.87 billion people. But global consumption of dairy products was limited by the lower supply growth in the second half of the year. So the consumption per capita only increased by 1.4% to 118 kilograms per capita, which is lower than in 2020. So we estimate that almost half of the consumption relies on the informal market. And we also estimate that processed butter accounts for 15% of consumptions, processed cheese also for 15%, and fresh milk and other products for 14%. If you look at dairy trade now, well, again, if you remember in 2020, 2 years ago, the international dairy market was severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, in the first half of the year, there was a solid increase in dairy trade, okay, compared to a low 2020 basis, but anyway. But the increase in the first half of the year did not continue in the second half of the year. In the second semester of 2021, trade was hindered by increasing price levels and rising transport costs, but also, of course, I said, by limited availability of dairy products, especially in the EU. And so, on average, in 2021, the global trade expansion was limited and only increased by 1.3%. And as you can see on the graph, the share of the EU decreased last year, the share in dairy trade. It decreased last year, and the share of New Zealand and USA increased. I also want to mention that dairy trade of fat decreased last year because less export of butter, and the dairy trade of protein increased because more export of SMP, despite a decline in production. And I would like to remind you that even if dairy trade in 2021 reached 93 million tons, it only accounts for a small share of global milk production. In fact, the share of world trade in global milk production lies between 9 and 10%. It means that most of the milk produced in the world is consumed locally without crossing borders. What about dairy price now? Well, in the beginning of 2021, price of dairy commodities were still impacted by COVID-19 measures. But later on, they were driven by the economic recovery, limited supply, and as I said, overloaded supply chains. So international price of SMP, WMP, and cheese all ended the year at the highest level since 2014. Butter prices also went up, but they didn't break the 2017 record. And you see that prices ended at a very high level, both in Europe, in the US, in Oceania, and also in the USA. It means it's a worldwide phenomenon. The yearly average, if you compare the price, the average price in 2021 and average price of 2020, well, the growth was pretty impressive, plus 30% for butter and WMP, plus 20% for SMP, and plus 30% for whey. So before moving to 2022, just a few words to sum up 2021. Well, I would say the global milk sector grew at a slow pace in 2021. You have a limited growth of milk production, a small growth of milk deliveries, also limited growth of dairy product production, so slow pace. Nevertheless, global per capita consumption increased by 1.4%, thanks to a sharp increase of milk production in countries like India, China, or Pakistan. So the question is now, will this trend continue in 2022? Well, as you're all aware, 2022 has been a very chaotic year so far, from a geopolitical, economical, and climatical point of view. We are in a situation affecting global supply of key materials, leading to inflation, and maybe to a drop of consumption in some part of the world. For all these reasons, we expect that milk production in 2022 will increase by only around 1.5%, which is again below average and below last year. This forecast is based on available data for the first semester, for the 22 semester, statistics of milk production, of milk deliveries from around the world. And we're also assuming that the growth in India and Pakistan will be in line with the previous years. And the current outlook shows a strong increase in Asia, especially, for example, in China. But this growth will be partly offset by a weak increase or even a decrease in the leading exporting countries, the USA, the EU, New Zealand, Australia, and this despite high farmers' price. Because production costs increased a lot in the past months, increased even more than in 2021. Energy, animal feed, and again, fertilizers. But high production cost in and of itself cannot explain everything. We have to take into account a compounding factor, which is the challenging weather. I mean, droughts, floods, heat waves, La Nina, and so on. And as you can see, milk production in the 7 biggest exporters regions declined in the first semester by more than 1.5% year on year. Even if we anticipate a rebound, a positive growth in the second semester of 2022, especially in the USA, the yearly average will still be negative in these regions. So less milk in exporting countries has strong consequences on dairy production. Dairy companies have to make some adjustments, some trade-offs in their product mix. And so far, we see that the 2021 trends continue in 2022. More cheese, more cream, less butter, less liquid milk. Well, situation is less clear for powders. You have more powders in the USA and less in the EU. But so far, 2022 trends continue in 2021 trends continue in 2022. So with less milk supply in exporting regions and a higher production cost, well, dairy price kept on increasing in the first quarter of 2022. Butter prices went over $7,000 per ton. SMP prices almost reached $4,500 per ton, meaning an increase of 20% from already very high prices at the end of 2021. I mean, dairy prices skyrocketed in the beginning of 2022, but starting the second quarter of 2022, prices started to drop. Well, on the demand side, imports have been limited, especially in China, where control measures of COVID are still in place. And so trade has not been very dynamic in the first half of 2022. You had high prices, limited volumes, and weak Chinese import. So to conclude, it seems like, again in 2022, global milk sector will grow at a slow pace, even if some countries will experience a strong growth, like India or China. But after COVID-19, consumers are now facing a new challenge, which is inflation. Because even if dairy prices, as I showed you, start to drop, well, they still stay at a very high level. And we all know that inflation is not going to disappear overnight. And I think the key word now might be uncertainty. Uncertainty on the long-term impact of the inflation and geopolitical issues, but also on the medium and maybe short term. I mean, uncertainty, disruptions, choose your word. I think that's the word you find almost everywhere now when we talk about 2022, not only about the dairy sector, but about the economy or even the global situation in general. So uncertainty about how long the price is going to stay high, uncertainty about supply chain disruptions, uncertainty about global economy, that's a lot of uncertainty. Even the IMF, I think they released forecasts in July, and they said their forecasts in July were extraordinarily uncertain. So uncertainty, I think, is a key word. My last slide now to tell you that most of the slides I have presented today, of course, and a lot more information can be found in the PDF report. You will have the PDF report, but also a PPT slideshow with all the graphs and charts, and also an Excel database with more than 30 tables. And for the people attending the summit tomorrow, you will be given a bag, and inside the bag you will find a code which will allow you to download the package free of charge until October 17th. So you will have until October 17th to download the whole package free of charge with a code you will find in the bag, which will be given to you tomorrow. And last but not least, I would like to add that there is an economic session tomorrow afternoon, late afternoon, with some of the writers of the report. So if you want to discuss further the economics issues of the dairy sector, please attend the economic session tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Marc, and thank you to our colleague from India for offering the report as part of your participation fee to this summit. So I'd like to invite the chairman of the National Dairy Development Board, Manish Shah, to present us a bit of an overview of the dairy market in India, and the floor is yours, Mr.
Good evening and namaskar. After listening Mr. Jean-Marc on the World Dairy Situation Report, I'll just give you some summary on where the Indian markets are. Before I go into the markets, I think as the chairman of NDDB, I would just like to brief you about the transformational journey which Indian dairy sector has made. As you can see, in 1950s and 1960s, our milk production was between 15 to 20 million metric tons. And we had a situation where most of our milk and milk products were dependent on the imports. First dairy cooperative Amul, which got established somewhere near to our independence in 1946. And the model was so successful for increasing, not only in increasing the milk production in our country, but also in providing the livelihood to the large number of rural milk producers. So in 1964, when Lal Bahadur Shastri ji, our then Prime Minister, visited Anand, Amul, he decided that let us have the Amul or Anand pattern replicated throughout the country. And that's how NDDB was born. In 1965, we initiated the National Dairy Development Board under a cooperative society. And then in 1987, it became the body corporate. From 1970, we initiated the Operation Flood program. Initially, they were supported by the commodities received from the European Economic Community, and they were monetized for creation of the infrastructure. And later we got funding from the World Bank. And you can see the graph, after 2.5 decades, of implementing the operation program, our milk production, you can see, has grown now to 210 million metric tons. We are the world's largest milk producer, and we are contributing 23% of the global milk production. So I think these are the few points which in the inaugural session our Honorable Prime Minister also made, that we are not only the largest milk producer in the world, but we are also the largest consumer of milk and milk products. Our production is by masses, and we provide livelihood to these masses rather than the mass production of milk like in the developed nations. The average herd size is hardly 2 to 3 animals, but it provides direct employment to more than 80 million families. And one of the important aspects which I would like to highlight is most of the dairy producers which we have, they are small and marginal milk producer, and the land holding they have and the animal holding they have, if you compare, the animal holding is far more equitable. It's about 81% of the rural households which are small and marginal, they own 82% of the animal holding. Whereas if you compare it with the land holding what they have, it's just 58%. So the animal holding is much more equitable. It provides them a regular income from the farming. The another point which we have been discussing from the morning, I think sustainability and Dr. Sodi's remark on the sustainability. But again, the model which we have is, I think, entirely different. The feeding system what we have is entirely on crop livestock production system. It's a circular system rather than feeding animals on the grains alone. And all these primary feed or the crop residues or the byproducts, they have a very, very minimum competition with the human feed. So in a way, we are also ensuring the food security of the humans in our country. And that's how we have selected the theme for the current World Dairy Summit as the nutrition and livelihood, because for us, both are equally important. I'll go to the Indian dairy market review now. As you all know, India is one of the fastest growing economies now. We have recently outplaced Great Britain to occupy the 5th largest economy in the world. We have a rising middle class consumers, and their preference for products like the cheese and the various derivatives made out of cheese, curd, yogurt or ice creams, it's giving us a big challenge to meet the demand to this rising consumer demand. There is a clear-cut shift, if you see, for the value-added products with emphasis on nutrition and immunity. And we have been seeing a very consistent growth for all these products, including the fermented milk products. Overall, our dairy industry is expected to have a very good growth going forward, and we expect it not less than 15% from here. The estimated size of our dairy market is about 13 trillion rupees in 2021, and we have been growing 15% for over the last 15 years, and if we maintain the same growth rate, we expect that by 2027, in the next 5 years, we will have a 30 trillion rupees dairy market size. And most of the milk products which we see, which will derive this growth, are cheese flavored milk, lassi, whey, and also the growing demand for the organic milk. So as I told, the markets have a very good growth potential, and our economy is going to further strengthen by the growth which we will achieve from the dairy sector. If we see just the consumption pattern of various milk and milk products, more than 35%, almost 37% of the milk which we process is consumed in the liquid milk form. Then the next best is the curd, which is almost 13%. So both curd and milk together, 50% of our milk procured from the farmer is going as fresh product to the consumer, and the remaining milk is converted into products like paneer, butter, buttermilk, ghee, and it's also used for tea and coffee and other milk products like the traditional Indian sweets. As I told, the dairy cooperative sector plays a very important role, both for the milk procurement and marketing. Our organized sector, if you see, they have an equal market size between the dairy cooperatives and the private milk brands, what we have. Although the liquid milk market, if you see, it is entirely dominated by the dairy cooperatives, but the private players are also giving a strong competition in the value-added products category. We have the very strong regional brands, apart from the brands like Amul or Nestle or Mother Dairy, they have the national presence. We have brands like Nandini, Avin, Hatson, Varka. They are all very, very strong regional brands. And some of the, the growing players in this segment, they are also the milk producer company which are recently set up. I'll just briefly give the idea about the growth different milk product category had from 2021 to 2022. Although there is a caveat that we had a pandemic and 2021 was a very low base. However, if you see, the liquid milk had a growth of 13%. And as I told earlier, the organic milk and the A2 milk, these two kind of milk segments, they are gaining popularity in the Tier 1 cities and they are growing at about 30% growth rate. The others, the other important point is there are a lot of startups in the dairy sector who are coming and they are mostly catering to this segment of organic milk and A2 milk. If we talk about the other species of the milk, I think camel milk is again worth mentioning. It is gaining popularity because of some medicinal properties associated with the consumption of the camel milk. Cheese is, I think, other product which has which had a growth of 27% from 21 to 21-22. As I told, it's the fastest growing markets among the dairy products. And we have seen a rise in the quick service restaurants. You see the Pizza Hut, Domino's or McDonald's, they are everywhere now. And because of the changed food habits and the preference of the younger generation, we feel that this growth rate will continue for the cheese. We have seen a lot of innovations in the products and packaging. We have seen a lot of different variants of cheese spread and cheese varieties, and also the packing materials. The other segment which is going is the flavored and frozen yogurts. Because India is a country where curd is consumed as a staple diet in most of the household, I think we are late in seeing the growth of the yogurt category. However, now it has gained the momentum. It had a growth rate of 18% from 2021 to 21-22, and now we have a lot of flavor options available for this category, and also the other category under the probiotics session. Also, there is a strong growth in the butter and ghee, the both fat products, and India has been, in fact, the largest consumed dairy product category in this dairy market growth. There is a growing demand coming up for the Bilona ghee or the ghee produced with the traditional method, and the consumers are ready to pay very high price for some of this kind of niche product. It's also surprising that A2 cow ghee is gaining momentum, and people are being charged very high amount. Although I think all of us will agree that there is nothing, in the fat about A2. A2 is actually linked to the presence of protein. However, A2 ghee is also being sold and consumers are paying a very high price. Butter market is growing, and it had a sales value of rupees 54 billion, almost $722 million in the last year, and it has a very, very strong penetration both in the urban and rural markets. As a category, the probiotic dairy products are going. I think more and more consumers are now getting aware about the benefits of consuming the probiotic products. Although it is still at a nascent stage, but we have different products like probiotic curd, some of the probiotic drinks like probiotic lassi and probiotic ice creams already available in the market. And I think Amul has all the three products available. The other categories like cream, whey, ice creams, those all products are going at a healthy rate of 15 to 20%, and we expect the same growth rate to continue. These are some of the products. As per our assessment, I think we need to keep an eye on. As I told, organic milk is growing at a very healthy rate, and so is the flavored milk, cheese, whey, frozen yogurt, milk shakes, and the probiotic dairy products. All of them are expected to grow at a more than 20% growth rate. We have been also, working on a generic marketing campaign on the consumption of milk and milk products, because we have seen some of the plant-based dairy products coming in the market, and we thought it is now generic campaign for the consumption of milk and milk products. I think the Honorable Minister mentioned about the quality mark which NDDB developed to ensure the quality of milk and milk products. We also have now the both quality mark and the BIS standards merged into a confirmatory assessment scheme, and that will allow a unified logo for both the process certification and also the product certification. We have made several campaigns both on the National Milk Day, which we celebrate on 26th November, and also on the World Milk Day for the consumption of milk and milk products. I think as the other speakers also shared, the concern for us remains the rising fuel prices and the inflation. What we have, it is putting a lot of pressure on the transportation and distribution costs, and the analog products or the plant-based milk and milk products. This category of products is also, I think, a concern which all the dairy fraternity people will have to come together and resolve. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shah. Our last speaker for this session is Laurent Damier. Laurent is a marketing specialist. He's presently the CEO of the French Dairy Board and was elected yesterday as a member of IDF Board of Directors. So Laurent, the floor is yours to talk to us about global marketing trends.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So after the excellent presentation of Jean-Marc on the supply side, we're gonna now have a look on the demand. So my name is Laurent, as Caroline said. I'm the CEO of CNIEL, the French Dairy Board, and yesterday, as you said, elected a new member of the board at IDF, and I'm very proud of that. So COVID-19 understanding changes in dairy consumption in the world. Oops, sorry, I'm coming back. Oops. Yes. So this IDF internal study was conducted by the Standing Committee of Marketing and the Standing Committee of Dairy Policies and Economics, and we did it the first semester of 2022. This is the third edition of the IDF Global Marketing Trends. We decided to do this global marketing trend in Yokohama a few years ago during the World Dairy Summit. We did 2 editions already, and this third edition is very specific because we wanted to track the specific impact of COVID-19 crisis on dairy product demand. Based on depth research conducted by IDF national experts, this study is intended to identify the main drivers and the main barriers of the food market, but especially of the dairy product consumption in different countries around the world, to understand the changes in the market trends during those last 3 years. So 19 So 2019, what were the trends before the COVID period? 2020, what were the trends during the COVID period crisis? And 2021, are we back to normal, or the consumer behavior has changed a lot? As you can see, this study was made in 22 countries, 4 in the Americas, Canada, USA, Mexico, Chile, 10 in Europe, Norway, Iceland, the Netherlands, Denmark, Poland, UK, Ireland, France, Switzerland, and the Czech Republic, 2 in Africa, South Africa and Kenya, and 6 in Asia, Japan, Republic of Korea, Australia, China, India, and Israel. In general, favorable trends for dairy markets in 2019. So 2019 was very favorable for the dairy demand, with very strong growth in 2020, and then a slight decrease in 2021, but with a favorable tail effect. So as you can see on the graph, most of the country answered that in 2019 already it was on a good trend. All the dairy product demand was increasing. It increased a lot, and you're going to see this in detail in 2020, and it decreased, of course, in 2021 compared to 2020, but above 2019. We can differentiate 3 different groups of market. What we can globally say the Western countries, or the most developed countries, then China and India are specific, and then other countries. In the Western countries, we can say that Western countries have largely benefited from the COVID crisis in 2020. In 2021, the situation remained better than 2019, but of course under 2020. So globally, we had a very good effect of the crisis. China and India are different because in 2020 they had problems maybe of supply, of different problems, so there was a slight decrease in consumption, but 2021, huge increase, and overall 2021 is over 2019. And some countries don't seem to have any impact of the COVID crisis. So 2019 was a very good year in almost all the countries. I'm not going into details on that. 2020 was very good in most of the countries, except in a few that you can see on the map. And finally, 2021 remained higher than 2019, but below 2020, except in China and except in India. As you just have seen, the consumption is now very high. Effects of COVID crisis on dairy products, we have positive effects and negative effects. Positive effects, high product availability as food stores remained open, and they remained open during the curfew or during the lockdowns. So of course people could go to supermarkets to buy dairy products. We could have seen changes in purchasing behavior, more purchases in supermarkets as people couldn't go to restaurants. Of course, they went more to supermarkets, and of course, more online shopping. It was a huge increase of online shopping in 2020 and then also in 2021, and it's staying today in 2022. Evolution of meals, that has a very important impact for the consumption of dairy product. As people were more at home, they cooked more meals at home. There is a strong return of breakfast. As you may know, for many years, breakfast has gone down and down and down in the Western countries, and the consumption of dairy products have been down and down and down, and especially milk in the Western country because of breakfast. And now there is a return of breakfast. Of course, 2020 because people were mostly at home, but 2021 we still have this tail effect. And people cooked more everywhere in the world at home, meals of course, but especially dessert, and this was very good for the cream as well as for the butter. Also, the consumers in the world in 2020 considered our product as essential products, and that's very important. There was a back to essentiality. So basic product, inexpensive, safe product, because there is a packaging, product and enhancing immunity in some countries was very important during the COVID crisis. And moreover, what is very important is that dairy product has been seen more and more as enjoyable, pleasure products for all members of the family. And I think that's one of the reasons also why we had such level of increases during the period. On the negative side, we of course had some economic situation, inflation, income decreases in some households, closing of borders, especially in China, but in other countries as well. It induces product availability problems, as well as supply chain disruption, and also a change in consumer behavior, especially in the food service, because restaurants were closed, so people couldn't go anymore to the restaurant, and that has still a tail effect a little bit in some countries. Consumer expectations have changed a lot during the last 2 years. A return to emotional and pleasure dimensions, a return of cooking at home, and an acceleration of local product demand, development of online delivery and collection purchases, and this is still in 2022. I'm not going to go into details because we are going to publish this document at the end of the year and you will have all the details. But just 2020, the main barriers you can see: evolution of home meals, change in purchases habits, change in eating habits. So all what I said, that people were at home, so they were cooking, and there were a lot of changes in 2020. In 2020, dairy products were very well positioned. I'm not going to go to the quotes of all the countries. I'm just going to go to India because as we have seen, India and China has a 1-year effect, so they are increasing more in 2021 than 2020. India, I quote what they said: the lockdown trend continued, of course, in 21. However, consumers got used to the restriction and started venturing out again. Of course, we all know that COVID-19 is not finished, but we get used to it, and consumption is coming back. If you look at specifically the liquid milk, you know that in the Western countries it's a decline for the last 15 years. But during COVID crisis, even the liquid milk market picked up back to previous level in 2021 with a positive tail effect. So even for the milk, drinking milk, the COVID crisis had a very positive effect for the consumption. If you look at the cheese, and this will be aligned with what Jean-Marc presented, the cheese is the big winner of 2020, of the COVID crisis. We already had favorable trends in 2019, but it was even higher in 2020. You can see the number of countries that had a very positive trends in 2020. Still increasing, but not the same level of increase in 2021. So we can say that the cheese has been the big winner of the COVID crisis. 3 major issues for the future of dairy market. All the countries answered that now the main issue is environment and climate, and that's what we have heard since the beginning of this afternoon. Animal welfare, that is a second concern for all the countries, and still health and nutrition. Uncertainties affecting dairy products in the future, of course the climate crisis, we spoke about this already, weather affecting dairy production, heat stress, water stress, decrease in fodder production, increase in input cost. Geopolitical and economic instability is, of course, a source of market volatility. some impacts of agroecology policies, especially I'm thinking of the EU regulation and farm-to-fork strategy, employment, and workforce disruptions. We have more difficulties today to hire people in the factories, and also to have new generation going to the farms. And finally, increase in vegetarianism or vegan diets, that is a concern. And in 2022, we have two main concerns, two new concerns. First, the Ukraine conflict, of course, and second, inflation. About the Ukraine conflict, of course, its timing and size remain uncertain. Futurib, which is like a prospective agency in Paris, proposed 4 scenarios for the end of the crisis. The first one, we are still in this one, so we can stay optimistic. It's a short conflict, only 6 to 12 months. It will end with negotiations, partitions, resolutions. Hopefully this will be the scenario. The second scenario, slow but continuous expansion of the conflict, so that might have a long duration, maybe a few years, but not only 1 year. Third scenario, towards a world of blocks, enlargement of the conflict, structuring of alliances. This is already a little bit happening, so it becomes like an international conflict. And of course, the worst scenario, a conventional and non-conventional military escalation. And of course, you don't know what's going to be the real scenario. Second, the inflation is a big concern in 2022. As you can see here, all food categories have been facing sharp inflation since the end of 2021, and it's continuing and it's going to continue for at least a few months or years. Nevertheless, to be optimistic, the FAO and OECD believe that dairy products will have the largest rate of consumption growth among all food categories over the next decades. And if you look particularly on dairy, the blue column, you can see that not only is going to be due to population growth, which is the very blue part, but also due to per capita demand growth, which is very important. So people are going to consume more dairy products. And this is an important perspective for the future of dairy. Conclusion? COVID crisis created strong increase in demand for dairy products, so we cannot deny that. So COVID crisis had a positive effect on the demand of dairy products. After a period of increase, the situation is almost back to normal, but with a very positive tail effect, and on some product, the positive tail effect is strong, such as, of course, the cheese, but also the butter and the cream. But some pre-COVID period consumer trends have been highlighted after COVID, such as climate change concerns by the consumers, animal welfare, demand for local productions. Of course, in 2020, inflation rates create a new uncertainty for the new future. In addition, the uncertainty surrounding the Ukraine war may become an even bigger problem in the future. But overall, long-term prospect for the milk and dairy sector is optimistic, even though we have those uncertainties. I would say, as a final word, and this is aligned with what Mr. Thanavat Tiensin, Director of Animal Production at FAO, said, the dairy sector industry will be expected to contribute to a triple challenge by 1, addressing food security and nutrition, 2, enhancing resource use and sustainability, and 3, fostering livelihoods and rural development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Laurent. And actually, that gave me the perfect bridge for a little piece of information. Yes. Before we go to the break, I'd like to share with you how actually IDF is helping to contribute to those 3 challenges. We have a short video for the annual report that we actually released yesterday. 1-minute video. I'm asking you for your attention for that. After that, we're going to give our speaker a token of appreciation. We're going to go to a break and come back for the Day Innovation Award afterwards. So can we play the video, please?
All right, thank you to all the speakers for this precious time and enlightening us with the insights. Now I would like to request Caroline to kindly felicitate the fellow speakers with the mementos. Can we have the mementos, please? Can we have a huge round of applause? We can do a little exercise of our hands by just clapping and just being happy. All right, let's proceed further with another memento. Once again, can we have a huge round of applause? Thank you for being such a lovely audience. All right, proceeding further. And this one goes to another gentleman. And once again, can we have a huge round of applause? All right. Mr. Nawar is here to receive his memento. Once again, can we have a huge round of applause for a charming guy here? Okay. So it's time for a group photograph. Everyone is looking all decked up for the picture. Let's get this one clicked. And now it's time for a short break and then we'll come back.